Hi, and welcome to the Brohoyo podcast, where we talk about gacha in general and Hoyoverse games in specific. I'm your host, Steven, and this is my co host, Dave.
Yo.
And this week, our subject that we are going to discuss is pool economy in gacha games. Dave, can you give us a quick definition when we're talking about economy in gacha games and pools and so forth, what we're referring to?
Yeah, so for those that are maybe new to gotcha games or maybe haven't picked one up yet, when we talk about pull economy in gotcha games, and then I'll get to what pity is in a moment, but in terms of that pull economy, we're talking about the currency that you accrue by playing the game, doing whether it be doing quests, in the game in terms of like story quests or your dailies or weeklies, kind of like what we talked about last week. Or maybe sometimes the developers give out rewards for new patches that come out or new events that come out or as thank yous to their player base. Or of course, since it's a gacha game, you can spend real money to buy some of that currency to then pull on those banners because in gacha games, right, it doesn't come with all the characters unlocked type thing. It's you essentially gamble to pull for characters or weapons that you build your roster with and then build around it. So when we're talking about that economy, we want to talk about kind of you know how much of these resources are you obtaining in a given week, month, whatever it is, so that way as a free to play player or a light spender, you can plan out what characters to pull for and what's realistic for you in terms of obtaining your goals in that regards. Now, when we talk about what pity is in Gacha, when it comes to that gambling for characters, you're going to do what we call pulls. You're going to pull for characters. And there's a given percent chance that a character of various rarities may show up. Using Genshin and Honkai Star Rail as the example, you have your 4-star units and then your 5-star units, or you have your 4-star weapons and your 5-star weapons. And for those 5 stars, those are a little bit more rarer to come by. And so what they do is for pity, once you hit a certain threshold, you've done a certain number of pulls and you haven't hit a 5-star unit, the game says, hey, we're going to increase your chances from the base chance to get that 5-star unit, or even some games will go to what's called a hard pity and they'll just guarantee, hey, you're going to get a 5-star unit here. And so when we talk about pity as it specifically adheres to Genshin and Star Rail, Steve, I think you have some of the numbers pulled up. What Explain to us the pity and how it works in Genshin and Star Rail for the character banner.
Okay. So for the character banner, you are guaranteed every 10 pools to get a 4-star character. After you get a 4-star character, that count resets itself, and so you are then going to get another 4-star character within 10 pools of successfully getting that first 4-star character. So each time you succeed at the pity, it resets and you start over again. For 5-star characters, which are typically the ones that you actually care about when you go onto the banners to pull, those have a slightly different system. The way that they work is they have both hard pity and soft pity. Soft pity comes into effect at 75 pools. So once you've pulled 75 times since you've either first started or got your last 5-star, you will then enter soft pity, where the rate for getting a 5-star character begins to grow exponentially. It grows very, very quickly until at 90, you have a 100% chance of getting that 5-star character, or getting a 5-star character. As long as you are pulling on a character banner, not the standard banner, but a character banner that is specific to one character, or one 5-star character, then you have a 50-50 shot the first time you hit pity to actually get that character. And if you fail that 50-50, you'll get somebody from the standard banner instead. Or I believe potentially a weapon. I can't remember off the top of my head whether weapons are allowed in character banners. Not super important for the purposes of this discussion. If you fail that 50-50, if you get that standard character, you then have to pull back until you get the 5-star character again. Pity resets itself, so you will have your low chance of getting a 5-star character until you hit 75, and then it begins, that rate goes up exponentially until you hit 90, and then when you pull that second time, you are guaranteed that character, that 5-star character. You're not going to end up getting sent to the standard banner again. And that process will then repeat itself. So once you've gotten your character from that character banner, your 50-50 resets. So you will then have a 50-50 chance of the next character that you pull on that banner being the character you want. It's also important to note that for the character banner, all of these pity carry over. So as a personal example, I was rolling for Kafka. I rolled up to pity. The character that I got was not Kafka. It was a different character. And I was unable to hit Kafka again for the duration of that banner. The next banner after that, which I believe was Silverwolf or somebody, it doesn't matter. Whoever the next character was after that, I was able to pull, and I was guaranteed to get that new character once I pulled a 5-star. I was no longer in my 50-50. That rolled over. So yeah, I know that was all very slightly confusing and technical.
Clear as mud, right?
Yeah, clear as mud. But that's roughly that's how the system in Genshin and Honkai work. There are other games that have the more straightforward system of we don't give you pity, you have the rate, and good luck. But yeah, that is how pity works in Genshin and Hoyo.
Yeah, so I like that, you know, it rolls over. We talk about different systems and different types of games. So I can appreciate, I think that's become kind of a gotcha staple almost now, where pity rolls over banner to banner. So yeah, like you mentioned, Steve, you missed Kafka on her banner, and then on the next banner, instead of starting from square one, you were already X amount of pulls towards hitting that soft pity at 75, and then the hard pity at 90. And then again, because you've lost the 50-50, yeah, that next one is guaranteed. So it's nice that that carries over. And when we see new gotchas that get released, I think that's something that people look for, is like, do my polls carry over? Because what you don't want to see happen, especially if you're coming from a low spender or free to play perspective, you don't want to see polls be wasted. So in some games, unfortunately, that is a thing where if you don't hit the character and you pull maybe a few more times, just like praying, hoping that you get this character, and you don't, and the new banner comes, you're starting over from square one. You're zero into pity, and it's, you know, whatever it may be. I'm trying to think of a game that did that offhand. I think Fate Grand Order did that.
Yes, Fate Grand Order does not have a pity, and
I think that was the biggest.
Yeah,
I think that was the biggest game that I'm most familiar with that did not have that, which was surprising, because Fate Grand Order does really well, and it's been around for a long time, and I know there's a lot of fandom and the lore behind that franchise as well. But that's kind of the biggest guilty party, as it were, in terms of that. Now, you do have other games that do other interesting things.
Well, just before we move on, I do want to say that Genshin is not free of that particular sin, especially the weapon banner. Because for the weapon banner, the epitomized pass does not roll over. So functionally, you are reset each banner.
Right. Yeah, that's true. For the weapon banner, it is slightly different than the character banner in Genshin. The rates are roughly the same. There's some slight nuances that are different. But correct, yeah. If you don't get the weapon you want, the epitomized path does reset. So what the epitomized path does, for those that are unfamiliar in Genshin, before you even pull on the banner, like first time you log in, there'll be that red exclamation mark that you want to click and make it go away. And you select which of the 2 weapons, 5-star weapons on the weapon banner, you want to go down in terms of your epitomized path. And if you hit the 5-star but it's not the weapon that you wanted, you get 1 credit towards your epitomized path. Now, if you go through and do pulls again and you hit a 5-star weapon a second time and it's still not the weapon you want, then if you go through it a third time, you'll be guaranteed that weapon that you want. But similar to what happened with me on Navia's banner and her weapon banner rather, I got 1 5-star weapon, and then I went through and got a second 5-star weapon. Neither of them were Verdict, that great axe that looked really awesome. Neither of them were that. And so I'm 2 out of 2 on the epitomized path, but I didn't accrue enough currency to pull and get lucky enough to hit a third 5-star weapon. And so now on this new weapon banner, I'm back at square one, as if I had never pulled anything towards that epitomized path, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, that is a pain that I know as well.
I'm that proud owner of, I think, 3 missed splitters. So Bennett's happy about it, but I think that's about it, because I don't have I don't have an Ayaka, which I think that's her signature weapon, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Yeah, which you have Ayaka,
Yep.
and you have a Myth Splitter, right?
Nope.
Oh no, you don't have it. That's right. That's right, because you got Verdict,
Yep.
and I got Myth Splitter, and we were both shopping for the what the other one got on that particular banner, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Now, looking at a few other systems, there are some that, like, I think Brown Dust 2 does golden threads or dust or something, like I forget what it's specifically called, but essentially every pull nets you, like, one pull nets one currency, and when you hit 200 of said currency, and Nikkei does this as well, where if you hit 200 of said currency, you can go into the shop and buy one of the limited banner characters, and that's just currency that you can hold on to forever and use whenever type thing. So if you do all of your pulls and miss, but you've accrued 200 of the currency, congratulations, you can go in there and buy whatever character tickles your fancy or is what you need for your build.
Yep. And I know that Ecopocalypse, it's a really tongue tie there. Ecopocalypse has a system where you don't have a pity, but the actual rate for, or they have a odd pity where you will get your 5-star equivalent fairly early. I believe it's only like 50 pulls. 40
40
pulls,
pulls.
40 pulls, but you're not guaranteed the character. They just have a very high rate on that banner. So you could pull 3 or 4 times, like you could hit pity 3 or 4 times, but you're not guaranteed that character, but they have like a 45% chance or a 50% chance of showing up.
If memory serves, yeah, they never had the guarantee for the banner character, just the guarantee to hit a 5-star unit, or in that game it's SSR in that game. And yeah, I believe, like you said, it's all the potential SSR characters you could hit, 40%, like, assuming like the card hits and says yes, this is going to be an SSR character, 40% of the time it's going to be the banner character, but that other 60% of the time it could be one of any of the other SSR characters. Now, despite having been around for not as long as Genshin, their roster of characters seems to be a little bigger, so that, yeah, it's not having a guarantee is a little frustrating, I would say. I appreciate having the guarantee, or the other option that I mentioned, right? Accruing 200 of whatever the currency is and then going into the shop and buying it with that. I can appreciate that because you're ultimately wanting the character that you're pulling for.
Yeah, and at least personally, I'm not super comfortable with games that don't have pities in place. It reeks a little bit too much of the old loot box issue of you could end up paying thousands of dollars. Like, again, I'm not a big spender, but it's a little bit too whale hunty for me. At least in any system where there's a pity, you have a hard cap of, okay, I know how much I'm going to have to spend resource wise in order to get what I want. And I'm not perfect. There have been times where it's like, look, I'm 20 pulls short. That's like $15. I'll toss $15 in order to get the character because I'm a little bit of a sunk cost fallacy there. But you're close enough that I'm willing to spend. But if there's a completely random chance of me getting that's just too demotivating for me. I don't want to have to get on that particular treadmill.
Yeah, I think I did that during Gone Yu's her first rerun. I was short currency, and I was like, well, if I buy the battle pass, I'll have enough to pull, and then I'll hit pity. And I was on my guaranteed. I'd already launched the 50/50 on a previous banner, and I was on my guaranteed, and so that actually incentivized me, therefore, to spend the $5 or $10 or whatever the battle pass is. Whereas if there hadn't have been a guarantee, that's money I wouldn't have spent. So there's that angle as well. They're like, well, maybe by having this guarantee, we can incentivize, those people that maybe wouldn't normally spend at all or as much, and maybe just spend a little bit more as well. So it's nice to have that for those reasons.
Yeah, and again, like I said, at least at that point, because even though the odds of, they have to publicly post, just for clarification, gotchas do have to,
laws,
yeah, due to the EU and I believe China and a number of other countries, they have to, for legal reasons, post what the odds are of you getting any particular character or set of characters, and so on and so forth. So having that, even though you can see those, that doesn't always math out. As somebody who plays lots of games with dice, be they RPGs, tabletop war games, what have you, you know, rolling a 1 on a six-sided dice is about a 16.6 repeating, haha, chance of happening. But I promise you, you're going to roll that 1 at the worst possible time. Like, it doesn't matter what the odds are. They feel different on the table. And so being told, hey, you have a 40% chance to get the character you want, I can tell you from personal experience, having played Ecopocalypse, I rolled 5 or 6 times before I got the character on that banner. I didn't pay because, again, there was no hard pity. Like, I wasn't going to put money down for something that wasn't at least guaranteed. But, statistically, me failing 5 times is not super likely. I'm not willing to do the math at the moment, but I can tell you that it was a mathematical outlier, but it still happened.
So for something like that, it's because you have a 40% chance of hitting it, and then it's times the likelihood of the event not happening times however many times. But yeah, I don't want to. I don't have a calculator to do the math in front of me. But I would say, yeah, part of the reason I think that I dropped that game was because of the lack of success for me pulling the character that I was going for on the banner, especially in a game like that. And we kind of get into pull economy in that regards, is that because dupes were important. Dupes, skills that were vital to the viability of a character were hidden behind getting duplicates. And once you got a character to a certain ascension level, as it were, like once you got a character to 3 stars, 1 duplicate was not enough to get it to the 4th level. It was like 2 duplicates were needed. And in a game that does that and doesn't have a guarantee, I was like, man, I'm gonna have a hard time like progressing content, and the fact that there's all these different modes in that game, and so I think you would have need a lot of different team comps to be viable on some of them. It was just too much for me, so I dropped that. Now in Genshin, while duplicates do have a factor, and Star Rail do have a factor in terms of some power spikes in your etalons and your constellations, it's not vital to the character fully unlocking getting duplicates like it is in Ecopocalypse or a few other games that are out there, right?
I would stick in a caveat that for 4-star characters, there are a number of them that really their kits don't come together until you hit higher level etalons or constellations. Genshin has a few characters that are pretty bad about needing either like a C4 or a C6 in order for them to come online.
Sure. Yeah, there are a couple that do see bigger spikes and better utility when you get more constellations or etalons. But I think, with 4 stars, you're going to be pulling those more often because you're guaranteed a 4-star right every 10 pull, as opposed to 1 every 90 pulls. Yes. To your point, yes, but you get those a little more frequently, so I'm not going to bang on those as much because we do see them pop up a little more often.
Fair enough, but I do bring it up in part because they kind of run into that Ecopocalypse, God, I wish they named that game something different, issue where because there's no like you can have the rate up on a banner, but you don't really have a way of guaranteeing getting those characters outside of special events or things like Lantern Rite, etc.
Fair point. Yeah, fair point.
That because they have that PowerPoint, like if you want to get a C4 Bennett, or I forget where Bennett turns on, it might be C2, it doesn't matter. If you want to get that power plateau constellation for them, you don't have a way of guaranteeing it. I know that there's been some content creators, some discussion online about how getting a C6 4-star can actually be more expensive than getting a C6 like
that's true.
5-star. Unlikely, but it could happen. Again, just kind of as part of the discussion.
Yeah, you raise a good point with that, and yeah, I'll cede that to you for sure. Yeah, there's no way to guarantee a 4-star unit when you're pulling on a banner. And that being said, it reminds me that when there's a term that you sometimes hear people are building pity. And this is a strategy that some people do, that let's say it's a banner that you're not interested in the 5-star unit, but you want to build pity, they'll throw a couple pulls onto the banner to earn towards that soft pity at 75 or the hard pity at 90, so that when the banner does come on a character that they want, they're just that much closer to it. And this is a strategy that I would not really ever recommend doing, especially if you're a light spender or a free to play player, just because the point you made, you can never guarantee, like maybe you're pulling on a banner for a 4-star unit because there's a 4-star that you want. You can never guarantee that 4-star, like you
Mm-hmm.
said. The other reason too is just maybe you get super lucky, or I guess unlucky if you don't want the 5-star, and you hit the 5-star. Now you've just reset your pity, and if you were on your guaranteed, you've now reset back to the 50-50 for that next banner that you want. So I would never recommend building pity if you are planning out your progression.
Yes, as a Kokomi owner who did not want to be a Kokomi owner, don't build pity. It doesn't end
But
well. You think that you're going strong, and then you
it's
get Kokomi'd.
at least Kokomi worked out for you and has a viable comp that you can
True.
utilize her in. It's not like he pulled sorry Deha, you know,
Yeah.
on her banner to build pity. So sorry Deha lovers. Sorry. I do like her design though, for the record. But yeah,
Yeah.
just but yeah, so don't build pity. But that's a very good point. Yeah, because you can never guarantee a 4-star unit, and I've seen content creators pull for 4-star units and then not get the 4-star unit, and then of course they're not happy about it. And but at the end, it's like, what'd you expect, right? Because
Hmm.
on any given banner, and just to clarify this for those that haven't played Genshin or Star Rail, every limited banner that comes out, there's the main 5-star character. That's the big promotion, the one that they promote and get you the big marketing videos for, everything like that. But each one has 3 4-star characters that effectively have a rate up as well, right? So if we look at banners going on right now in Star Rail, they just dropped Black Swan,
Hmm.
and she's the 5-star Nihility Wind unit that's out there, and her 4-stars on the banner. There's Ting Yun, who's electric. There's Guinaifen, who's the fire unit, and then a new 4-star unit, Misha, who is ice. And if you're pulling because you're like, oh, Misha, a new unit, I don't have Misha. There's no way to guarantee getting a Misha. Similar to like Steve, you and I just did our Black Swan polls, posted up. Watch those shorts on the YouTube channel there to see those results, right? But and this is me complaining from a place of high roller logic, right? I didn't get a Misha in my polls for Black Swan, but that's because I hit Black Swan in 30 polls. I got really lucky.
Yeah.
But you can't guarantee it.
Well, and to that point, if you're setting yourself a cutoff of, I'm only really looking for the 5-star character.
Hmm.
If you hit them in 40 pools, that's, I'm gonna say, roughly 4.5, maybe, probably less, chances of actually hitting one of those 4-star characters. That's not a lot of rolls on the dice, especially when you count that 4-star weapons are included in them. They're at lower rates, but they are there. Other 4-stars are in there, again at lower rates, but they are still there. So 4 rolls of the dice, you have maybe a 70% chance of even hitting the rate up characters, and then from there it's another again, a lot of math, but
Yeah, if you want me to nerd out a little bit here,
yeah.
I'll nerd out a little bit, right? So if you hit a 4-star unit on the Honkai Star Rail banner, it is a 50% chance to be one of those 3 banner units, and then a
Mhm.
50% chance to be literally any other 4-star, like you said, a light cone or another character, right? So let's assume the coin falls on the side of the 50% chance being one of the 3. Well, then it's 33.3, repeating, of course, percent chance to
Of
hit the
course.
one that you want. But there's not going to be a guarantee that it's going to be the one that you want. You could get a string. I think you got a string of Ting Yuns in a row, or
Yeah.
Gunaifens, I think. And for me, I think I got like 2 Ting Yuns. I didn't get a single Gunaifen or a single Misha, and I really wanted Gunaifen because
Hmm.
she's on my Nihility team, right? And so yeah, so whatever that chance is, again, 33% chance time, like, right? So you can't guarantee it, and then especially if you're trying to get etalons of the character, yeah, it's just Now, luckily, with, and we'll get into this a little bit later on when we talk about our early impressions of 2.0, there's going to be a free 4-star that they give out that you can choose from. And so you could choose Guinaifen, you could choose Tingyun, you could choose, Sampo
Hmm.
if you really want to. Or, you could choose somebody useful like Guinaifen or Tingyun. Unless they do something like that,
Hmm.
which they only really do around major events or major patches,
Yeah.
yeah, you're not, you don't have a way to do it.
Exactly. And even then, like again, around New Year's, you'll maybe get a chance to choose, and then every other patch, you'll get a 4-star character, but you don't get to choose that character.
Right.
It's
You don't
it's
get to choose it,
given
just
to you.
give it. Yeah.
Yeah, assuming you do the event and so forth. So
Right. Yeah. Then you have to do the event to a certain point. Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah. So I guess all of that to say that while Genshin has a weird mix as far as their economy goes. That, in the 5 stars, I'm fairly comfortable with where those are sitting. I like that side of it. The 4-star side of it is a bit Wild Westy for my preference. Like it's a little bit
Now,
too wild there.
now, something I wanted to get into about, because we talked about, well, how can Genshin or Star Rail do better, right? Because that's something we always
Mhm.
hear about. Well, their pull system, their gotcha system stinks. It's like, we could do better. It could be better. It's like, well, how could we be better? So an interesting thing, and I kind of want to get your thoughts on this,
Mhm.
is an interesting question that I've posed to some people and thoughts like, well, why is it a 50-50? Right?
Mhm.
Because the weapon banner or the light cone banner in Star Rail isn't 50-50, it's 75-25.
Mhm.
But everything else is 50-50. And it's like, well, why 50-50? Why not 60-40 or 70-30? And I kind of want to get your thoughts, and then I'll share mine because I don't want to, necessarily bias your answer one
Yeah.
way or the other. But what are your thoughts on the 50-50 system? How could it be improved? And why is everything 50-50 as opposed to another percentage?
So I think it's mostly psychological. I think that if you bump that number up, and excuse me while I go off on a tangent, but
You're bored, baby.
yeah. Dave, you've played XCOM, right? I believe you've played XCOM or XCOM 2 at
Oh,
least.
yes. I enjoy XCOM. I enjoy missing at 99%. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's exactly what I wanted to bring up. Where XCOM had a feature where it would tell you the exact percentage that you would hit a character on a shot. Now that actually wasn't exact. There was a lot of math going on behind the scenes. I believe there were some errors that would allow a 100% shot could still miss. But the problem is that when you're told as a player that you have a 95% chance of success or a 90% chance of success, you translate that in your head as it's a sure thing. So when you fail, that feels real bad and you get really frustrated. Like that builds frustration real quickly. Whereas if you're told a lower number, if you're told, hey, in this case 50-50, hey, there's a 50-50 chance that you will fail this. If you fail that, it doesn't feel as bad because at least that's a coin flip. That's something that you can very easily, equate out to, oh, it's a coin flip. It's a 50-50. I'm not more likely to get it than I'm not, and because I'm guaranteed on the next one, it's okay. Whereas if you did something like a 60 or a 75, failing that is going to feel way worse, and you might not continue on to that guarantee. Or if there's no guarantee after that, you might not continue on at all and go, well, the system's rigged. They screwed me, etc., etc. So I think personally that the reason why you see 50-50 so much is for that reason. It's that it's mostly psychological because we as humans are really bad at actually understanding statistical chances. Like it's the reason why the gambler's fallacy exists. It's the reason why there's all of these different fallacies and stuff tied up in gambling and so on. That we're really bad at figuring out that no. This is what the stat is. It doesn't change. If you flip a coin 3 times and they all land as heads, the next time you flip that coin, there is a 50-50 chance it will land on heads.
And
That's my
this is
thought
why I
on it.
wanted this is why I wanted you to go first, because, and I didn't want to give you my
Mm-hmm.
opinion yet, because for the hilarity is I've thought about this, and that was kind of my train of thought as well. right? Because you reference XCOM because that's just infamous. Anybody who's played XCOM and knows that game, we've missed 99% shots. Or if you're a Fire Emblem fan and you played Fire Emblem,
Hmm.
you've missed an attack that was supposed to hit at 90% and you've been hit by like a 7% chance, and then that 7% chance to hit even had a 1% chance to then critical. It did. Your character died. There goes your Iron Man run, right? So we've all seen that, and you're exactly right. In my mind, it's gut wrenching to lose something so statistically minimalistic in terms of chances of happening.
Hmm.
And that's why I agree with you. I think 50-50, exactly like you said, it's a coin flip, could go one way or the other. Eh, let's gamble, right? That's essentially what we're doing in this, where it's you know
Hmm.
and whereas losing that 70-30 or 80-20 is just gut wrenching. Like,
Hmm.
so Nikkei does this. There's an item that you can get, or a shard. There's shards that you can get, and when you get 50 of them, you can pull with a 71% chance to get an SSR unit, and then it's a 29% chance to get the SR unit. And let me tell you, when that screen flashes purple and I get an SR, and I've gotten a lot of SRs in those molds for the
Hmm.
last 3 or 4, maybe even 5 times. It is extremely frustrating. So I think you're spot on. I think you hit the nail on the head. Maybe anybody, if you guys have some different thoughts or inputs on why you think 50-50 versus others, we'd love to hear it since we both have a similar mindset. Now, in terms of the economy, right now
Hmm.
we've talked about the pity system. And in terms of the economy, Genshin and Star Rail, we can just even compare the two of them because even though they're both from Hoyoverse, they have different economies
Hmm.
and they have different levels of, I think, charitableness from the developers. Using recent patches
Hmm.
as for instance, right? So Star Rail just released 2.0, and we got essentially 10 immediate free polls, and then we'll get 10 more over the course of a 7-day login, so 20 free polls. Genshin doesn't have the 10 immediate polls. I think that we just have kind of the 10 polls over 7 days type things. And then historically, because we have a bigger track record with Genshin having been around for 3+ years, Genshin kind of has a reputation for being a little less charitable in terms of some of these rewards or thank yous.
Hmm.
Like when they won awards at whatever gaming shows or gaming cons, we were getting primo gems, but it was enough for maybe a single pull, if that.
Yeah.
Whereas other gotcha games may be like, oh, thank you for like letting us hit #1 in the App Store. Here's 10 free pulls type thing. And so in terms of the economy and in Genshin specifically, as it relates to other games, while I would also agree with the sentiment that Hoyoverse isn't the most generous when it comes to that. The second statement I'm about to say can also, both of these things can be true at the same time and yet seem like they're conflicting in ideals. And that's, they're not that charitable. That's statement number one. And statement two, because of the game design in terms of the roster and the end game content, or some people would argue, and the lack thereof, right?
Hmm.
You don't need as much. Like I think I mentioned earlier that dupes aren't a necessity to unlocking a 5-star character. Maybe it's a 2 to 5% power spike increase each etalon or constellation, but it's not as required. And the other thing too is the roster. The roster of characters isn't as large because Hoyoverse has such a big emphasis on having people get attached to the characters and
Hmm.
the waifu aspect or the husbando aspect of it, and standing for their characters, right? So I think that's, again, I think both those statements can be true. Is Genshin isn't the most charitable in terms of things, but because of the game style, it doesn't have to be. But what are your thoughts? Maybe you disagree with me on one or both those points.
So, I guess there's 2 points I want to bring up before I go in a little
Sure.
bit further. The first point is I do agree with you that Genshin is less charitable. However, I do think it's important to note that at this point in Genshin's life cycle, we are getting a new character per patch, one new character per patch. Right now in Honkai's life cycle, we are getting two new characters every patch. So if you want both of those new characters in Honkai Star Rail, you're having to earn very, very quickly or you're having to spend. Whereas with Genshin, yes, they are stingier, but you're not having to spend as often unless you're trying to get those higher constellations or you're trying to save for a streak of characters that are coming one patch after another. For the most part, you're just not having to spend as much, which could also be considered a downside. I'm not going to argue that one way or the other. The other is, and this is not my unique thought, Vars is the YouTuber who put out this video, but I do think he brought up a good point. So I'm just putting in my notes that he is the one who came up with this. This is not my unique original thought. I'm stealing it from him, but I do think he brings up a good point where Genshin doesn't compete with other games in the same way that WoW didn't compete with other MMOs. Like Genshin kind of stands alone in its area of gacha. Whereas Honkai Star Rail is, at its bones, it's a very high production turn-based battler. Almost turn-based auto battler if you go into auto. But the competition between Honkai and the other options on the market is much higher than Genshin and, say, Tower of Fantasy or other games that are coming out in that genre that are trying to compete with Genshin. So Honkai has to kind of stand out a little bit more. They're not...
You and Vars raise a good point. So I guess to extend that logic out, then we'll see what happens as we get closer to, and then when like Wuthering Waves launches, or when Arknight's Enfeld launches, and see if that maybe changes Genshin's approach to some things, perhaps.
Yeah.
Is that, I guess, how you would think?
Yeah, that would be the argument, that if Genshin starts seeing a market share loss, if they start seeing Wuthering Waves does really well and starts moving up the charts, I think you're going to start seeing Genshin have to hit the panic button a little and go, oh, no, we need to keep people more interested and build it up. It doesn't help that in a lot of ways, they've set it up so that when Honkai is releasing their content, Genshin is going to sleep, and when Honkai is going to sleep, Genshin is releasing their content. So there's this sort of yin-yang push and pull between the two, that one goes quiet and the other picks up, which as a company...
There's a Venn diagram in their player base, and there's some overlap.
Yeah, so they know that works, but what it means is that you're going to be seeing revenue go up for one and down for the other, and if you're trying to do a one-to-one comparison on them, as a player base, if you're trying to do that, you're going to go, oh, well... look at this. Genshin's doing all these pulls and so forth. It's doing so well. Well, yeah, a new patch just dropped. A new version just dropped. We're in 4.0 or eventually 5.0. People are excited. They're off playing Genshin, whereas, they're not playing Honkai. And then we're about to enter in Genshin the drought season. It's past New Year's, after Lantern Rite. It's all down here until September. There's going to be some summer content, there's going to be stuff going on, but Genshin's going to sleep after this. Whereas Honkai Star Rail just dropped their new version, their new patch. They're going to be hitting story content and so forth for the next few months, and that's going to generate interest and keep Honkai higher up the charts. So... yeah, there's a bit of that going on, and I think it's important to point that out, that Genshin kind of is off on its own, doing its own thing, whereas Honkai has to kind of fight for scraps against other games that are much more similar to it.
Yeah, and that's a good point. It's a good nuanced take, right? Because everything is multi-level, and I think that's something else, too, that not maybe a lot of people can consider when it really comes to a lot of the intricacies of stuff like this is things are lost in the nuance on most of the general public. And I think that Genshin being a game that did kind of break through to the normie, maybe non-gamer type crowd, and this is their first gacha type thing. Some of that can be lost, but yeah, that's a great point that you bring up, and yeah, it's just something we'll have to watch and track as we move further into 2024, and as we get closer to the the next big thing for Genshin, and then whenever we do learn whenever Wuthering Waves is going to drop, or Arknight's Enfeld, I think those are the next two, or at least those are the two that I would say I'm watching the most closely in terms of kind of direct competitors to Genshin in terms of game style.
Hmm.
Tower of Fantasy, when that came out, I know it was. I don't know. I've read so much now. I can't remember if it was an actual marketing campaign or if it was just something that somebody said that took off, but they never actually marketed it that way. I can't remember. But Tower of Fantasy was more of really a true MMO RPG, and Genshin posited itself maybe as that, but isn't. Whereas Wuthering Waves and Feld will be similar to Genshin in that
Hmm.
they're not MMOs like Tower of Fantasy is. It's you go explore your post-apocalyptic world. It's a little less rainbows and sunshine like Genshin and more
Yeah.
post-apocalyptic, I think, especially Wuthering Waves from what I've seen. And then of course the other factor too, and the other that we'll have to throw into this is whenever ZZZ comes out because it's another Hoyoverse game. It's an action game similar to Honkai Impact the Third, not Honkai Star Rail.
Hmm.
So I'll be interested to see how that messes with the ethos of Hoyoverse fan bases. So those are kind of things that I'll be looking to try out.
Yeah. And just real quick, I know that I've held off on this, but we are going to do a real quick direct comparison in the
Okay.
economies between Honkai Star Rail and Genshin. So the patches that we are going to compare are patches 4 and 4.1 for Genshin, and patch 2.0 and 1.6
Okay.
for Honkai Star
Good,
Rail.
because yeah, that's because 4.0 and 2.0, those point oh ones are generally pretty big ones, and then other ones can be big, but they're usually not. 2.0 is big.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm going to give you the Genshin numbers first.
Okay.
So for Genshin in 4.0, if you were free to play, you would get 83 pulls. 63 of them would come from the first half. You'd get then 20 over the second half of the patch. If you
Now is
were
this?
uh,
I'm sorry, real quick. Is this is for rewards from maintenance? This is rewards from logins and doing the whatever events and story quests. Does this assume open world travel? Do you know?
yes, so this is the adventure. This is any limited content, so events, so on and so forth. Daily commissions, Stardust Exchange, 5-star test runs, Spiral Abyss, completing that with a 36 star, completing all of the achievements, completing all tutorials, doing the Hoyo Lab login bonus, watching the live stream, the maintenance, using all the codes,
The
web
codes. Okay.
events, Twitch drops. It includes everything
Okay.
except Welkin and Battle Pass. So this is
Okay.
if you scraped Genshin to the bone.
Okay.
You would get
83.
83 total. If you Welkin, that goes up to 109. So that is
Okay.
a roughly
Guaranteed
26.
5-star. Okay.
Yeah. So that's a guaranteed 5-star and a little bit of extra. If you Welkin and Battle Pass, it goes up to 117.
And so the Welkin is $5 and the Battle Pass is 10. So that'd be 15.
Yes.
Is that accurate? Okay.
Yeah, that's
So if
accurate.
you spend $15, it jumps from. No, if you said if you do the Welkin, I'm sorry.
If you do the Welkin, it's 109. If you
That's
do
$5.
both, if you spend 15, it goes to 117.
So you get 8 more pulls for buying the Battle Pass on top of the Welkin. But if you don't do anything at all, it's 83. Okay, I'm with
Yep.
you. Thank you. I'm just spelling it out for dumb old me and anybody else who is going my speed listening in. So okay.
No problem. And so that's a large patch. Now, you had mentioned that the 4.0 are typically larger patches. This actually kind of spits in the face of that because version
Oh, okay.
4.1 of Genshin, if you were free to play, you would get 104 pulls. And if you Welkin, it's 130. And then if you Welkin and Battle Pass, it's 138. So they're actually more generous on the off. Now, part of that, to be fair, is that
So
4.1.
4.0 was 104?
Yep. No, 4.0 was 83 if you were free to play.
Oh. Okay.
And then
And then
4.1 is 104 if you're free to play. Now, part of that is that the third anniversary happened, and apparently they gave out quite a few. They basically gave out 20 pools. So if you do the math,
Back to that, yeah.
guess what? 83 plus 20 gives you 104.
103. Yeah.
103
Okay.
plus a little change because these are.
Okay, so
We're converting it over.
we didn't completely spit in the face. It's okay. There's still a little bit of maybe truth to that. I'd have to go back and back up that claim, but okay, that's interesting though.
Yeah.
It's still interesting.
So a rule of thumb is that if you're free to play and you scrape on everything, in a patch, you'll probably come away with somewhere between 75 and 80. I don't believe it's really reasonable for somebody to get all of the achievements in a patch. You're going to miss codes, you're going to miss little things. So if you're free to play and you're really, really playing, you're doing all the events and so forth, you'll probably come away with somewhere between 75 to 80 pulls, which means that you're hitting soft pity each patch, but you only are guaranteed a character every 2 patches. In comparison, for Honkai, I'm going to kind of go a little bit in reverse where it's 2.0 and then 1.6. So we're stepping backwards in this one, but it doesn't matter. Sure. So in 2.0, if you are free to play, you get 114 pulls.
So we're already up 30 on Genshin, but okay.
Yep. If you're pay to play, if you get the Express Pass, it's 142 pulls. If you go with the Battle Pass and the Express Pass, you're at 150.
Okay.
And the math on this one is a little bit different because in 1.6 in Star Rail, it's 84 pulls. If you're Express, it's 108. And then if you buy the Battle Pass, you get 8 extra pulls, so 116. So comparing the 1.6 version, at least with Genshin, they're actually fairly on point with each other. Now, the other caveat to all of this is that 1.6 was the patch that they gave us the free 5-star. So,
which we would value at 75 pulls, unless you're me.
Unless they're you,
unless you have my luck.
Or if you're me, it would be 180 pulls. But so
you're still getting a 5-star to be fair. But
yeah, I think that for our purposes, we're gonna just cut that because I don't think that went into the power budget, the Jade budget of the patch. I don't believe that was the case. So I do think that for a lot of this, there's a bit of I think it's a bit of a lie. Or I don't want to say it's a lie, but it's also important to think that during this 2.0 patch, if you look at it, it's 30 up over what we would normally get of the 84. Well, we got an additional free 10 pulls, and we're going into Lantern Rite. So that's 20 pulls there. So really, we're only 10 pulls up. And it is 10 pulls. I'm not denying that. But looking at it, it looks like, at least on a patch-by-patch basis, Genshin and Star Rail are fairly even. It's only on those the crumbs on top. You know, not that a free 5-star is crumbs, but, you know, it's those sort of things that push it out of balance. I think that between the two games, the actual pull economy are very, very close. That in 6 months, I think you're going to see them pretty much in lockstep, unless something big happens. But that's just my opinion. That's just looking at this and kind of my interpretation of what this says.
Well, those are good. That's a good number breakdown. I'm intrigued by that number. Yeah, so effectively, and like you mentioned, that's assuming you scrape everything out, which it's maybe the casual player, which is kind of some of the appeal of these games, right? Is they appeal to casual people, and because there's no PvP type stuff. Yeah, so I think 70 to 75 pulls could be reasonable for what you're getting each patch, which would put you into hitting that soft pity, or if you can get extremely lucky, which you should check out our shorts on our YouTube page for seeing some good luck if you want. But interesting.
Yeah. And I guess another point to bring up is that the Honkai Star Rail pulls, like the bringing it together, I think part of what pushes that a little bit higher is that you get a lot more standard pulls just kind of for free, because every week you get a free standard pull for Simulated Universe. There's 5 free pulls in the Battle Pass. You know, you get your monthly 5, and then at least for the 2.0 patch, you also have to remember that you're getting the world shops, that by doing the achievements there, you're getting free pulls. So they tend to be a little bit more generous, I think, with the standard banner in Honkai Star Rail, where it's a little bit easier to get pulls.
Speaking of that standard banner, I'm coming up on my 300th pull, which in Star Rail, once you do 300 pulls on the standard banner, you kind of get your choice of one of the 5-star characters that are on the standard banner. So I'll probably, whereas in Genshin, that's not a thing. So I'm 9 off, and I think I'm leaning towards E1ing my Bronya.
Okay, and you're gonna go tall instead of wide, I think, for your account.
Yeah, because if 'cause looking at that, I mean, I use Bronya in my Jingliu build, and I think this is kind of bleeding into what we're going to talk about next week with comps and stuff. But yeah, we'll save that more for next week.
Yeah.
But I am approaching my 300th pull, and it's not been a year yet, or it's about to be a year for Star Rail.
Yeah.
And whereas I'm trying to think with Genshin, yeah, I don't think 300 standard banner pulls in a year was a thing. Now, granted, I didn't start Genshin at launch, because it launched, as we established a few weeks ago in September, is when it started, and I started playing in February, so I did miss some of those initial launch bonuses that they gave out. But if memory serves, again, going back to they're not the most generous, they didn't give out too many. I think they maybe gave out 10.
Yeah,
I'd have to double check to verify that, though. I don't recall exactly.
I think it might have been 20 at most, but
Still, though, it's 20 on a 0.6% chance to get a 5-star, so
yeah, I think it was basically enough for you to knock out the novice banner, and
which doesn't guarantee 5-star, guaranteed you the Noel, right?
yeah.
But no, that's good stuff. So I'll be interested too. And speaking of, we talk about all these new patches. I know we just had 2.0 drop in Star Rail, and so I kind of want to get some initial impressions, and we'll have a more, I think, well-developed view next week. We're going to dive real deep into it and our experiences with it, getting through the story and some of the new stuff they've introduced. But I do kind of want the first takes in our time that we've spent with it just in this last couple days. So we've had a couple days to play around with it, Steve. I kind of want to hear your initial takes, your initial thoughts on Penacony and what you've experienced.
Yeah. So this patch came out a day early. Came out Monday instead of Tuesday. So, you and I, Dave, we did what we usually do when there's a character that comes out. We jumped on, we pulled. You can see that, an abbreviated, shortened version of that in our shorts. I know we keep on plugging it, but they're there if you want them. So we did.
So they can get that dopamine hit without spending any currency themselves, right? That's what we're all here for.
Exactly.
Anyway.
So, we did that. Both of us ended up getting Black Swan. I guess spoilers for those. We both ended up getting Black Swan. We both ended up getting her light cone, which then proceeded to drop me into the hell that is, I need to get her built up, and I didn't have the resources. I went from very rich to very poor very quickly, at least in-game. I lost a lot of my in-game credit money, not the premium, but the regular
actual credits.
Yeah. Actual credits. My materials were drained. I'd already leveled, I think, 2 different light cones for Black Swan. One before I realized that there was the free-to-play light cone that you can get from Simulated Universe for Nihility. So then I was going to use that one, and I got that one, and I leveled it up. So I completely burned through all my resources ahead of time doing that, and she's still sitting on like a level 60-something light cone instead of a full level light cone. Regardless, jumped through all those hoops and then jumped into the story. Without getting too deep into spoilers and content for next week, I like it. I really am enjoying Pecony, whatever. I'm going to mispronounce that planet so many times. Regardless, I really enjoyed it. There seems to be a lot of moving parts. This seems to be a more complex setup story than Liwe or Jarrillo 6? Jarvan 6? I can't remember what the Ice World.
Jarrillo. Yeah.
Jarrillo. Yeah.
Not Jarvan 4. You're confusing your league.
I'm confusing my league. So Jarrillo 6, those were more straightforward-ish, at least as far as the story went. Like, there were twists and turns, but this one Coney seems to really be focused on lots of different characters, lots of different moving parts. If I do things correctly, like last week, you should be seeing, or you should have already been seeing, quite a bit of gameplay from the early part of 2.0. So at least the first rough hour of it worth of gameplay. I love the cutscenes. Lots of good cutscenes. High quality cutscenes there. I would also say that because there's so many moving parts and so many new characters that they're kind of, I don't want to say rushing to the character to try and get you to know or meet and so forth. It feels a little bit scattershot. Again, I'm not super deep into it from what I can tell. I'm guessing that I'm maybe halfway through the current content, but that's a very much so guess. I might come back next week and be like, I was wrong. I was, I hadn't even broke the surface of this, or I could come back and go, I was wrong. I was actually way further in than I thought I was. Regardless, I do think that it's pretty good. I do also find it interesting, and I believe we talked beforehand, and you had mentioned that you were past this point. When you first arrive at Peconi, the meeting with Archeon in the dream,
Mm-hmm.
the
When
the
you're traveling there.
yeah, when you're
On the
traveling there, yeah,
Yep.
the use of red text is one of those where I'm kind of going, okay, what is, like, this is a fourth wall breaking thing that appears to be important, but I don't know. I feel like that's going to come back. There's also been a lot of speaking in riddles. Again, further content that you haven't gotten to yet, Dave. There's a lot of, for a setting which is very heavily based on dreams, and I guess for those in the audience who might not play Honkai Star Rail, Peconi is a hotel, a space hotel that used to be a prison, and in order to visit it, you go to the hotel and then you lay in a bathtub and you dream yourself into Peconi, which is just it's a dream world, which again gives me a lot of Persona vibes as well. So they seem to be playing around with a lot of different ideas and concepts, a lot of fourth wall breaking stuff. There's some game stuff that plays around with the idea that you're not in a real grounded world. You're in a dream. And again, it's bringing the plot of it is bringing a lot of different factions together. This isn't really a spoiler because they announced this. We already know what's happening. It's part of a trailer. You know, the destruction group is coming. The Flame Barons, I believe, is what they were called. The Flame Barons are showing up. They've mentioned the masked fools. You know, you have the family, which is for harmony. You have the IPC, which is the preservation aligned organization. So there's a lot of different factions showing up and a lot of different characters from factions showing up that all seem to be moving kind of crosswise. And that's about all I want to say because, again, I don't want to spoil anything for you, Dave. I'm really looking forward to the discussion next week to kind of see what your thoughts are, and hopefully by then we'll know a little bit more. I guess the other kind of, I'm about to pass it off to you. I do apologize, but the last little thing I want to squeak in is that I'm getting a lot of Sumeru storyline vibes from Peconi. That whoever wrote the repeating section, the Endless 8 section of Sumeru, I think there was something that they hadn't worked out to their satisfaction, and they brought that over to Honkai. But that's just me guessing.
Okay. Yeah, I you touched on a lot of things that I have experienced. Yeah, I'm not as far into it as you are, but yeah, that initial cutscene when you essentially when you trigger the first part of the quest, right? It does it. So I think talking about that cutscene, that's not really a spoiler thing because if you initiate it, you see the cutscene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cutscenes have been great. The red flavor text that threw me off, and I was like, oh, this means it's important, right? Because it's not white text and it's not, it's all red type thing. I think the character designs are fantastic looking. I'm when you're introduced to some of the new characters that are very obviously going to be playable characters eventually. I'm not going to, again, we'll do a deeper dive next week on who those will be and what we thought on some designs. But I think they look great, and I'm intrigued to see, or what those ones that we know are going to be playable, what their kits are going to look like. But also story-wise, I'm interested to see how that plays out. Now, going to Genshin, we've had a little bit more time in 4.4, and we did have Lantern Rite officially start. So, Steve, I know for you and Lantern Rite, you haven't really had a moment to dive too deep into it yet. I think you've done some of the initial stuff, and I've stepped foot into the new zone, not fully in depth into it yet, but I've unlocked parts of it. And then as far as the mini games with Lantern Rite, there's the one that I have done is the Get Guoba and the other little character on the grid-based map, the little puzzle to figure out how you can both get them to the food in a limited amount of moves or spaces. So that's relatively straightforward and easy to do, but there's some complexity to it. But I do like that. because I think last year was what they did, the like the shadows, and like you rotate different pieces of the shadows to make it match
Yeah, it
whatever the image
was.
was. That and now I didn't necessarily love that one because sometimes it was very finicky in terms of
Mhm.
what they accepted as the correct shape. Whereas this one's just straight up a grid puzzle, and you either get it or you don't.
Yeah.
And then the second mini game I haven't done. Story wise, it was funny to me. Obviously with Jin Yun being Cloud Retainer and being an Adeptus, it's funny because in the very early stages of the Lantern Rite quest, you meet other Adeptus, and they have, as we'll just say, NPC face. They will not be playable characters in the future. Their
Hmm.
design is very common, which cracked me up.
Yeah, you can tell that they have. I think the only thing that sets them apart is that they have slightly different colored hair and they have kind of better looking clothes, but you can tell that they're rigged to the NPC model. Their faces are. They got NPC face bad.
Yeah, so I think Cloud Retainer is going to be our only playable Adeptus, unless we learn about new ones, maybe. But and then going to the new zone, they have introduced some new movement mechanics. I think involved. It's very like Zen and Koi Pond esque. So
Mm.
there's like some koi fish type things, which are the equivalent. There's not a new like statue of the seven in terms of how we had the Geoculus and how we had the water, the Hydro-Oculuses and whatever for each various region, but there are similar collectibles in the open world that you find, and I actually think they are carp. It's like something carp, I want to say. I don't know exactly where you turn those in or what they unlock, but they're popping up on my mini map, so I'm finding them as I come across them.
Yeah, it
And
sounds like it might be like in Ecomia. I can never pronounce that one either, or one of those, or the mountain.
oh yeah, how a dragon spine had the bloodstone type
Yeah,
stuff.
for the tree.
That's a good point because this is kind of a similar vibe to dragon spine, where it's a new zone, but it's in the same regions that we've already been introduced to. Because it's where it is in the mini map, right? It kind of connects um, Liwa to Fontaine a little bit.
Okay.
So, so yeah, I think that's a good analogy to it, similar to Dragon Spine when you did the mountain with the bloodstones, correct?
Yeah.
And then of course with the event, we expected this when we talked about skins the other week because we saw Shenhe's and Ganyu's skin that you would purchase for real money. Here you do the event, you get Chung Yun he's the 4-star sword user who likes books. You get his skin by doing the event mini games and such. So I'm always down for free cosmetic gear. I'm a big proponent of alternate outfits and stuff, so I can always appreciate changing it from the base look.
Yeah. Also for them because apparently Ganyu's skin has broken her, and they keep on having to give
Oh,
out primos. Like I think we've gotten 400 primos because of they've had to constantly go back and patch her over and over again because stuff doesn't work in her new skin.
oh, is it like is it clipping or something or like what? I didn't know we were
No,
getting rewards for that.
yeah, I didn't read the second one that we got, but the first was
Okay.
that if you switched to her skin while you had her, like her E out, her skill out, it wouldn't taunt correctly, or no, it was causing her charge shot to like miss. It was like offset slightly, so you'd be aiming and you'd like hit to the left.
Oh,
You'd end up slicing your shot.
oh,
Uh,
jeez. I play video games to not experience my golf game. No.
Yeah, and then I think the other one, I think there was another issue, and again, I didn't read it, and I've deleted the mail at this point. But they had to do another like 100 primo giveaway because she had some other issue with her charge shot where it wasn't doing something correctly with her new skin. So whatever is going on with that skin, apparently it's breaking Ganyu. In some rare cases, it's not like she's unplayable at the moment, but apparently there are some edge cases that were causing issues, and they're having to patch her.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I'll have to go back and read that text. I completely missed that. I just saw, oh, Primo Gems. What'd they mess up? I didn't really care. I just got Primo Gems, right? So
Yeah.
that's too funny. I'll have to go back and double check that. Well, I did want to kind of jump really quickly into kind of other Gotcha news things going on. And there's not too much in terms of the gacha games that I'm playing outside of Genshin and Star Rail because of the new patches, new content. I've been spending a lot of time in that. But just very briefly, Nikkei has a new event going on. It revolves, the theme is maids. So the new character they released was Privity, but she's the unkind maid is what it is. And so she was already an SSR in that game, but they've given her an alternate version. So it's not just a skin, it's an alternate version with a different weapon, different skills and such. And then they gave a new skin through the battle pass to Drake. So if you're interested in checking that out, and then there's a mini game associated with the event as well, which is just a silly little sort the cupcakes into one bin and the bombs into another bin type thing, and do it quickly. And the more quickly you do it, the higher your score. So that's that. And then, not gacha related, but something I did want to ask you about, Steve. I know by the time this goes live, it will have already happened. But here we can kind of give our Super Bowl takes. And if we were correct, it is documented proof of what we did. And if we were wrong, then we're way wrong. So, who do you think's winning on Sunday? And who do you want to win on Sunday?
I think I'm winning on Sunday because I'm just skipping it outright. I'm probably not even going to watch the game if I'm being 100% honest. I'm winning back that time. I'm going to go full conspiracy theory. I think Kansas Chiefs are going to win because the NFL wants them to win. Yes, I wear that particular hat. I do believe the game is rigged. I'm a Steelers fan. I believe the NFL has been working against us for far, far too long. And yeah, that's where I stand. I said it.
Find yourself a quarterback this offseason and you should be all right. Yeah, I think the Kansas City Chiefs will win. I hope that they win. I think it'll be a close, low-scoring game. If I was a betting man, and I am, I would take the under. I think the over-under is 46.5, and I would take the under. And I think it's a close game. I think the only way it's a blowout is if the Chiefs' defense just swarms the 49ers. But two really good teams. Excited to see how it plays out on Sunday. But when this goes live, it will have happened, and I will either be a fool or I will be a genius. TBD. But we do want to thank you all for joining us this week. Be sure to share with us your thoughts on Hoyo versus Pity system, their poll economy, and maybe how it could be improved in your mind. Or maybe let us know what your early impressions are, here a week into Star Rail's 2.0 update. If you did like this episode, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the channel. Or you can also email us at brohoyopod@gmail.com with questions or suggestions for the show. We are currently also working on getting a Discord server set up for you guys as well. We'll share links, videos, and have a more integrated discussion with you guys. Join us next week when we discuss the elements, their interactions, and the potential team comps for Genshin and Star Rail.
We made a choice, go fight against your fate.